Hello, lovely people of Africa and beyond. This is HealthAfrik on AAU TV. AAU TV is the voice of higher education in Africa. Today, we are discussing misuse and overuse of antibiotics. And I know you're a culprit, so stay tuned and let's listen. Today we have in the studio Dr. Emanuela Abasakunedu. She is a pharmacist with Pharma Symbiotics Limited. And then I also have Mr. Anjuni Ofori Anan. He's also a pharmacist with PNT Pharmacy. You can tell it's already going to be an interesting conversation since you're a culprit and I'm a culprit. Stay tuned. I am Bridget Ama Denteh. Welcome back from the break. As I said earlier, today we are discussing misusing and overusing antibiotics. And I already introduced my guests, Dr. Emanuela Abasakunedu and Mr. Anjuni Ofori Anan. You're welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's great to have you here. All right. So today we are discussing antibiotics. So, Dr. Emanuela, what is an antibiotic?
Okay, so an antibiotic is a medication that is used to treat an infection, specifically a bacterial infection. Okay. So that's basically what an antibiotic is.
Okay. Are there types of antibiotics?
Yeah, we have different types for different conditions. Okay. So depending on what microorganism is causing the infection, then we have specific types for each one. Okay. So we have urinary tract infections. There are specific type of microorganisms that are there that are causing that infection, and so we have specific antibiotics that target those microorganisms. Yes, and then we use them for that. Then for the coughs too, we have different types of microorganisms that are there, so we have specific antibiotics that are used to treat that. So depending on the infection, what kind of microorganisms are there, we have specific type of antibiotics we use.
Okay, yeah. So Andrew, what is the best way to take an antibiotic at all?
Okay, so the best way to take an antibiotic is as prescribed. When I say as prescribed, anytime you go to a hospital, you see a doctor, and you tell him your symptoms, you tell him how you're feeling, what is wrong with you. After the doctor assesses you, it can be after labs, after he does auscultations, he uses the stethoscope and everything, he can analyze your condition and prescribe certain antibiotics for you. When he prescribes an antibiotic, usually there's a dosage and a dosage duration. So you can say, okay, take this antibiotic 8 hourly, that's every 8 hours. Usually that means 3 times a day. But it's better they write it 8 hourly. That means every 8 hours you're supposed to take it for this number of days. So maybe 7 days, maybe 5 days, maybe for a month. Okay, that is how you're supposed to take the antibiotic. Usually it also goes either before or after a meal or 30 minutes before or 30 minutes after, or an hour after. Every peculiar antibiotic and its peculiar instructions. Okay, so it's very important we take the antibiotic prescribed as instructed. Okay, so for every antibiotic, the instructions may vary. Okay, but how the doctor has prescribed or how the health professional has told you to take it is exactly how you're supposed to take it, and to the letter. It's very important, to the letter. Yes, and for most of the antibiotics on the market, they are given for a course. So as I was saying earlier, for maybe for 5 days, for 7 days, you find that some people take them for maybe 3 days, they feel better, and okay, and no, I'm done. Yeah, but it's very important we take it for the full duration of days as prescribed. Yes.
Wow, full duration of days. So if it's 1 month, they are taking it continuously for a month.
Yes, and there's good reason for that.
Okay.
We'll get to that.
Okay, so there are instances where you have a particular symptom, and maybe when you had that symptom, a doctor prescribed an antibiotic for you, and you are done taking the medication. Maybe after 3 months, the thing is back. You are feeling the same symptoms. So you go in for that antibiotic and you start taking it without doctor's prescription. You just go to the pharmacy and then you buy it, and then you're taking it. Will it kind of salvage whatever you're going through, or it's actually not good to take an antibiotic without prescription?
Okay, so first of all, if you are having, let's say, similar symptoms as before, and you went to the hospital previously and the doctor gave you this, if you go to any pharmacy worth its worth, the pharmacist wouldn't just give you the antibiotic for you to take if the pharmacist is present. Okay, every pharmacist would ask you what is wrong with you and assess your condition just like a doctor would. Okay, if the pharmacist has to refer you back to the hospital, he will do that. The pharmacist has to provide a first aid remedy. Let me give you a classic example. You find a lot of people having symptoms of common cold. People get common cold and get fevers. Okay, someone can have a common cold and have a fever and think it's malaria. This is a very common case in Ghana, and you can treat. You find a lot of people taking malaria medicine for common cold because they have a fever and they have a cold, so they think they have malaria. Okay, but it's not malaria, it's just a cold. So if you go to a pharmacy and a patient might walk into a pharmacy and say, oh, besides me treating malaria, I want to buy malaria medicine. Okay, so I want to buy a quart, I want to buy a Lunat. Okay, the pharmacist will ask you, oh, how are you feeling? What's wrong with you? Okay, if the patient goes ahead to explain how he's feeling, based on the symptoms, the pharmacist can either provide, for example, based on the symptoms, a cold medication that will solve his problem. Okay, where he doesn't need the anti-malaria medication. Okay, but just walking into the pharmacy saying that I want this, I want that. So similar symptoms doesn't mean it's the same condition. There are so many conditions that present with similar symptoms. So many, there are a range of them. So on the patient's part, your duty is to walk into the pharmacy and explain your symptoms. Okay, so it's the duty of the health professional to assess you, whether the pharmacist, whether the doctor, to assess you and give you the best medication for you. So yes, as you're saying, like, so you were feeling the same way as before, so you go to the pharmacy and you think the same medicine. That might be the case, it might actually be the same condition. However, there are certain cases where there might even be a better medication for you or for that condition. So it's not always that you would want to take the same medication for the same condition. It's our job to know what to give you when. So sometimes you just have to trust the health professional knows what he's doing. Not sometimes, always actually. Always. It's very important. It's very, very important. We are there to help. Yeah.
Okay, so Emanuela, he indicated that the pharmacist will ask you what is wrong with you before giving you the drug and all of that. Has there ever been an instance where the person comes with a specific thing that the person wants? Anything you suggest, it's as if the person is not listening. So the person will have to leave the pharmacy without buying the drug.
Oh, countless times.
And you leave them to go. That's why
no, you see,
they are sick.
we do our best to educate them.
Okay.
So I have an instance. A lady walked in. She said she wanted what people call amoxicillin. Amoxicillin. So I asked her that, oh, then what's wrong with you? And she said she has a vaginal discharge. Now, me, the health professional, knows the kind of organisms that are there. And we don't usually use amoxicillin for vaginal infections. And the way she described it, it was obvious that it was fungal. Amoxicillin is an antibacterial or antibiotic. So her taking the amoxicillin was not going to help her. So I tried to explain it to her that the amoxicillin is really not going to help you. This is what is wrong with you. I have a drug here that can help you. It's called fluconazole. You take it, or I can even give you one that you can insert. It will help you, blah, blah, blah. And she listened to everything I said. But amoxicillin, I'm a fa, na eboa minti, no na me pe. And I know that that's not what is going to help her. That's what she thinks is helping her, but it's not. So I tried to explain to her severally. She didn't. She said, okay, what do you mean, and she left and she didn't come back again.
Wow.
And that happens a lot of times in the pharmacy. People think they know what's best for them, but they forget that the pharmacist really has their best interest at heart.
Okay.
When we are working, it's for you. We don't open the shop for ourselves. We open it for the patient. So when the patient comes, we always consider what is best for you. So I think what people should understand is that the pharmacist is here for me. The pharmacist is not just being stingy or they just want to hold it back from me.
They want you to buy the most expensive drug.
No. Well, I mean, but not exactly. We're always picking what is best for you.
Okay.
Yes. We will not give you something that you don't need. Yes. So that's it.
Okay. So the mention of fungi brings me to microbial infection as an umbrella. Let's look at what comes under microbial infections.
Okay. Okay, so we have, like you mentioned, microbial infections, different types. We have viral infections, we have fungal infections, we have parasitic infections, we have bacterial infections. So antibiotics, like we are talking about today, are specifically for bacterial infections. Then we have antifungals, which are specifically for fungal infections, like the fluconazole I mentioned. I don't know if you've heard of it. Yes. So we have that. Then we have antiparasitic drugs.
Okay.
So, for instance, Coartem. There's the thing inside is called artemether-lumefantrine. Right? It is antiprotozoal, which is a parasite. So that is for antiparasitic infections. Then we have the antivirals, like one we call aciclovir or cyclovir. That's for viral infections. So every different type of drug and for the condition and what kind of infection it is, and then we give you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you don't just give antibiotic, anti-resistant, just
no,
like
you need to assess what kind of infection it is. So like I mentioned with the lady's own, her symptoms were obvious that it was an antifungal, it was a fungal infection, I mean. So that means I need to use an antifungal agent. If she came with some kind of skin infection, I looked at it and I thought it was bacterial, then I would give her antibacterial. If she came with a viral infection, then I would give her antiviral. So it depends.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I'm enjoying the conversation here, but we'll have to go on a break.
All right.
Viewers, we're going on a quick break, and when we come back, we are continuing with antibiotic resistance. Stay tuned.
4 years ago, like most young people, I was clueless as to what I wanted to do and which institution would help me realize a great career. What better place to pursue this dream than Blue Crest College? With state-of-the-art lecture halls and experienced lecturers, as well as equipped computer labs, Blue Crest is indeed the right starting point. With certificate, diploma and degree programs in information technology, business administration, journalism, oil and gas, Blue Crest is the one-stop institute for everyone who is looking to have a great career. Enroll now. Visit www.bluecrest.edu.gh or call any of the numbers on the screen. Blue Crest College. Education for life.
welcome back. We are still discussing misusing and overusing antibiotics with Dr. Emanuela and Andrew. So before the break, I indicated that we'll be talking about antibiotic resistance. What causes antibiotic resistance, Andrew?
Okay, so antibiotic resistance is simply when the bacteria find a way to be able to defeat the antibiotics we've developed to defeat them. So it's a huge global threat and it's a big problem. So if you develop this agent or this drug to be able to clear this bacteria. However, this bacteria has developed a defense mechanism of sorts, and now the antibiotic is no longer working to defeat or clear from your system. Okay, so the bacteria have various ways of doing this.
Exactly.
Some of them have like pumps.
Okay.
So
What
when
pumps is?
like a regular pump. So let's say the bacteria is a tank. Okay, a tank with a pump.
Okay.
Okay, so now usually, let's say the drug is a tablet that you're putting into the tank. Now this tank has a pump in it. When you put a tablet inside, the pump pumps the tablet out. Essentially, so that's what the bacteria has done now. Okay, it has a pump. It's developed that is just pumping the tablets out, the antibiotic out. Okay, so that's how some of them have developed resistance. So previously, when you put a tablet in, the bacteria just dies. Okay, it's just cleared. But now it just pumps it back out. It just kicks it out. Yes.
And what gives it the strength to do that?
Yes.
Is it over time or continuous taking it? Or?
It's a mixture of both, essentially. So as you said earlier, misuse and overuse. Okay, so we spoke earlier about when antibiotics are prescribed, there's a dosage duration and there's a way to take it. Okay, so misuse, that's antibiotic abuse essentially, comes about when, for example, I gave you an antibiotic to take for 7 days. I said take it morning, afternoon, and evening, every 8 hours for 7 days. Okay, after you eat. However, you took it for the first 3 days, morning, afternoon, evening. You did well. Morning, afternoon, evening for 3 days. Now you're feeling good. The fever is gone. You're feeling strong. The risk, you don't really think you need to take it again. So you stop. So you start with 4 days for you to take it, and you stopped. So you have 4 left, and you stop taking it. So now what happens is, there might be some of the bacteria left in your system. Okay, and now they've seen part of the drug. Okay, but they've not seen all of it. Now the reason for the treatment course or the dosage duration is science has shown, or studies have shown, that within this treatment duration, it can clear most or all of the bacteria in your system. But when you stop after 3 days, there's some left in your system. You might feel better. The little bacteria left might not harm you. However, they might develop resistance to the drug. Okay, so that's how they sometimes develop this resistance, when you don't complete the course. That's one way. Okay, another way is when you don't take the drug properly. Okay, so for example, you took it 3 times and you stopped. Similarly, you weren't taking it 3 times, you're taking it once a day. You took it once today, once tomorrow for the 7 days. Same school of thought, because the drug has to achieve a certain concentration in your body to actually kill them. So if you're taking it once a day, it's not reaching that concentration. It's not reaching that level it should reach to be able to kill them. You understand? So it's essentially, it's like you're tickling them.
Okay, so what would be the best thing to do if this bacteria develops resistance? What would you do then? Would you increase the drug? Would you increase the dosage? What would you do to make sure that it's actually working, the drug is working?
When bacteria, so it's bacteria that develops resistance. Okay, when bacteria develops resistance to a drug, there's nothing you can do with that drug. The next thing is, we usually you switch the drug, and usually the next drug you switch to is usually more expensive. This is why antibiotic resistance is actually very serious. Because at the rate at which we're going, the cost at which we might be purchasing antibiotics in the next 10 years or even 5 years, it's actually not so far away as we think it is. It's very close. It's imminent. We might be buying antibiotics for common cough. I don't know how much you buy antibiotics for currently, but for a common cough, you might be having to be treating it for about 1,000 cedis in 5 years. It's not far. It's not far. At the rate that we are going, so we actually have to really sensitize ourselves and everyone how serious this threat is. So when bacteria develops resistance, we usually switch antibiotics. So usually we do sensitivity tests. Sorry. Okay. So they culture the bacteria. They test a number of different antibiotics that are known to have activity against that bacteria. Okay, and we see whether it's working. So, for example, we mentioned amoxicillin earlier. If amoxicillin was known to have effect, but right now amoxicillin is resistant to this bacteria. So now you move to the next one. Let's say azithromycin. You try it. Okay, now azithromycin is having resistance. You move to the next stage. Maybe cephalosporin, maybe cefpodoxime.
Wow.
Yes. Okay, so you try, so you get one that actually has activity against it, and then you use that. Okay, but more often than not, the higher you go, the higher the cost. Okay, that's usually what happens. Yeah.
Okay. So is it only when a bacteria becomes anti-resistant that you have to undergo a test before another drug is prescribed for you, or you have to go through a test for an antibiotic to be prescribed for you?
Well, ideally, especially in the very well-developed countries, most of the time they do what he mentioned, the sensitivity testing, when they have an indication that you might have infection. They do some susceptibility tests, sensitivity tests, the same thing, to find out, okay, what organism is here, and then they give the specific antibiotic. But in our part of the world, it's a bit hard to always do the sensitivity testing for every infection that people come across. So we do what we call empiric treatment. So usually we look at the infection, we look at the symptoms, and we can gauge, okay, we are pretty sure that it is this infection, and then we go ahead and we give the antibiotic. But the ideal situation, ideally, is that there should always be some tests being done to find out the causative organism before you give the organism. But it's still not entirely wrong to give empiric treatment. I mean, if you don't have the tools that you need to do the sensitivity testing and you are a health professional, you can always analyze and assess and then go ahead and give the antibiotic. So that's why it's very important that it is actually a health professional who's looking at you and who is giving you the antibiotic. Yes.
Okay. So what would be some of the effects or symptoms that someone will experience after maybe misusing, overusing, or just underusing an antibiotic?
Well, you might not necessarily immediately present with anything. Okay, but maybe for underuse, for instance, maybe what you would find is that your infection keeps on coming. So maybe you are supposed to treat it for a week, and you take it like 3 days, like he said. So then maybe within 2 weeks, you're getting it again, or even a month. The organisms are pretty smart, like he said. So they go and hide, they've been exposed to certain amounts of the drug. They know how the drug works. They start to mutate, they start to change, so that the next time that you give that same drug, you are not having any effect, any activity. So usually, you might not necessarily from the first instance get symptoms, because maybe I underused it. But what we are talking about is the long-term effect, that in a couple of years, we have something called natural selection. In the world, generally, every organism, whether human to the microest organism, has to survive. So they find a way to adapt. They find out that, okay, this thing is killing us. How can we change in order to survive and thrive? So that is why resistance is happening, because the organisms are changing they need to also survive. They are also living beings. So they are starting to mutate. It's just natural. They are starting to mutate. They are finding out, okay, if I put this, like he said, if I add a pump to my cell structure, then I can be able to pump out the thing that is killing me, and then I can survive. Do you understand? So that is basically how all of this is happening. So what we are thinking about is the long-term effects. That, okay, in a couple of years, the organisms that we were treating with common antibiotics like amoxicillin and things, they are not dying. The organisms are not dying. Now we have to move on to very, very potent, the strong antibiotics that we were saving for serious infections. Now we have, like he mentioned, the 1000 cds ones. Now we have to use them for common infections. So that's basically what we are looking at. But then also there's also the case of overdose. As for overdose, it applies to every medication, and every medication has different ways it presents when you overdose. So if you take too much of it, you might have nausea, you might have vomiting. Those are the very classic ones that you have. But for different drugs, they all have different ways that the overdoses present.
So we are just about to wrap up here, but then before we go, we have animal farmers using antibiotics to treat all sorts of things in their farms. And I'm thinking, using a human drug on animals, what are the effects? And even after the animal is dead, like chicken, you all eat chicken, then you take it, won't it have an effect on you? The fact that they've used like a human drug or an antibiotic for humans on the animal.
Well, let's not say human drug because they were made to target the organism. So no matter where the organism is, it will kill it. So if the organism is, let me mention one organism we call E. coli. It is in humans, but it lives in other organisms, in other animals and things as well. So if there's E. coli in the animal, we can use the antibiotic to treat it. So they are not necessarily designed specifically for just humans, but it is the overuse in animals that has become the problem. Because when you go to a vet, they use the same antibiotics for humans for them. And it's not necessarily wrong. It's because they have the same organisms affecting them as are affecting us. So the problem here is about them using it when the animals are not sick. So they will use it as preventive measures. Oh, they want to prevent an infection. But that's not
bigger.
Some of them do that. But that's not how to use antibiotics. So antibiotics can be used in animals. If the animal is sick, is starting to present some, is looking sick, you take him to the vet. The vet assesses him, and truly, if it's an infection, they go ahead and give for the animal. And the problem here too is when they use it for prevention, and we consume the meat, it would also have traces of the antibiotic in it. It may, especially if it is a lot. If they keep on pumping the animal with it, then we take it, and then that is also contributing to the resistance. Because we mentioned that resistance is when the organism is exposed to small amounts of the drug that's not necessarily enough to kill them. So when you eat it, you have traces of the antibiotic in you. You also have natural organisms that live in your stomach or in your body. So they start being exposed to the small amounts of these antibiotics, and then you see that they also start to change. So all of these things are contributors to the whole antibiotic resistance thing. So the problem here, or the solution to the whole animal farming thing, is that they should take the animals to the vets. Let the veterinary doctor have a look at the animals before administering the antibiotics.
But then they also say that prevention is better than cure. So antibiotics, they've been saving us for some time now. Would you say it's a good drug to be used as over-the-counter, even though over-the-counter drugs are not necessarily bad? Thanks to education, you gave me those more. But would you say it's also good to be sold over-the-counter, since it's been saving us for some time now?
Antibiotics are not over-the-counter drugs. So antibiotics are generally classed as pharmacist medicines and prescription-only medicines, depending on the antibiotic. So pharmacist medicines meaning only a pharmacist can dispense this. Prescription-only meaning a doctor has to write on the prescription for you, to be dispensed by a pharmacist. Okay. So antibiotics should in no way or in any case be dispensed as over-the-counter medicine. That's why you can't walk into a pharmacy and demand an antibiotic. It should not be said. There's
So
no.
it doesn't happen anywhere.
If it's happening, it shouldn't happen.
Okay.
It shouldn't be happening. Okay, because it's not over-the-counter, so no one has the right to demand it. It shouldn't be said. Every health professional has the right to refuse to serve it. Unlike over-the-counter drugs, where if you walk in and you ask for it, I can decide not to ask you any questions. Actually, I can still actually ask you questions depending on the situation. Okay, but for antibiotics, because of the resistance we've spoken about, you wouldn't. It's generally not given as an over-the-counter drug. But yes, as you mentioned, prevention is better than cure. There are certain cases where antibiotics are given for prevention or prophylaxis. Okay. Sometimes you find people going for dental procedures or post-surgery, even after pregnancy. Some people have C-sections after delivering. They give antibiotics to prevent infections. Okay, there are a few cases where antibiotics are given for prevention. These are cases where there's a high risk of infection. Okay, and there are generally cases where the area in question might have a high susceptibility to infection. Okay, or the person's immune system is so low that if an infection sets in, it might be too severe. So you don't want it to get to that stage. Okay, so there are certain peculiar cases where you will give an antibiotic for prophylaxis. So even in some specific group of patients, they are given antibiotics daily. Okay, every single day you are taking an antibiotic, a specific group of patients. Okay, but it's not done for everyone. Okay, and it's under the guidance of a health professional, a doctor or a pharmacist. It's not broad spectrum. Yeah, it's not for everyone. Okay. So yes, prevention is better than cure, but it doesn't apply to antibiotics.
Okay, thank you. So I'd like to hear your final words on to advise someone who's there, using it just like that. Final words since you're wrapping up here. So you want to go first, then Andrew.
Well, I think we've said most of it, but the most important thing is that you shouldn't take antibiotics for fun. At any point in time that you feel you have an infection, just go and discuss. Pharmacies are all over Ghana. Just walk in and say, oh, I want to speak to a pharmacist. And one thing we also have to notice that not everyone behind the counter is a pharmacist. So you have to request that I want to speak to a pharmacist and tell the pharmacist, okay, this is how I'm feeling, my head, my this, my that. I think I have an infection. What do you think? You see, trust the opinion of the health professional. And then we will say, oh, I don't really think you have an infection. Oh yes, it's true, you do have an infection. So let's give you this. So as much as possible, whenever you feel the need to take an antibiotic, just make sure that you are talking to a health professional before you do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Andrew.
Yes, just to reinforce what Dr. Emanuela said, yes, it's very important that you realize that the pharmacists are there to serve you. We are there to help you. And I think a lot of people work with a perception. I think, like you said earlier, you walk into a pharmacy and we give you the most expensive thing. It's actually, it's not like that at all. And I feel like there's a public perception of that. However, it's very important that when you walk into a pharmacy and you explain your symptoms, I think with Ghanaians, sometimes we have this, I don't know, we are shy. There are a myriad of drugs available for conditions. If a pharmacist recommends something you can't afford, let the pharmacist know, okay? Let him present your options. You have responsibilities and rights as a patient to know all your options. The pharmacist has a responsibility to let you know all your options. So ask the pharmacist, what are my options? Okay, I don't want this. what are my options? Okay, so if you walk into a pharmacy and the pharmacist gives you this, and you feel like, oh, this is too expensive, ask the pharmacist, what are my options? But don't go demanding what you want from the pharmacist, because the pharmacist is there to give you what is best for you. Okay, so if you present something that he thinks is best for you at that point in time, and ask him, what are my options? He still will give you something that is best for you. There are always like first-line drugs, things that are one thing that might be better than the other, or one thing that I might consider might be better than the other.
Okay.
However, in every case, you choose what is best for you in that scenario. Okay, and it's your right as a patient, and it's the responsibility of the pharmacist to present the best option for each and every individual patient. So it's very important we go to the pharmacy with the mindset that the pharmacist is there to help me.
Yeah.
Okay, he's not there to take my money or anything. More often than not, like we encounter cases where it seems like people walk in and it's like the pharmacy is like a grocery store. I want this, I want that. It's not like that. And when I work in a community pharmacy. I'm working in community pharmacy for a while now, and sometimes it feels like, oh, the patients working and they are demanding this and that. We are not there for the money. We are there to like make an impact and help people. Okay, so when you walk in, let us know your problems. Let us help you. Like, avail yourself to be helped.
Yes.
I think that wraps up everything. But it's very important regarding antibiotics, especially, that we complete the course. It's very, very important. I know a lot of people in our generation don't complete antibiotic course, and it's very serious, because, as I was saying, in the next 5 years, it's actually not far away, and it can actually lead to poverty in our country. So it's a very serious global threat, and there are not many new antibiotics coming out.
Yes.
So we are running out.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you too.
Thank you very much for coming today. It's been a wonderful experience, and I have learned a lot. I'm sure my viewers have also learned a lot. This has been HealthAfrik on AAU TV. Today we have discussed overuse and misusing antibiotics. They've already told you when you have a condition, just go to the pharmacy, explain to them. They'll give you your options. Don't go demanding you want this, you want that. It doesn't work like that. Let's do the right thing, and always make sure you take all your doses to the letter, and we will be fine, just so that we don't develop resistance to the bacteria. Thank you very much for watching. I am Bridget Ama Denteh.